Welcome to Knocking to 10, the podcast for go-to-market leaders scaling from 0 to 10 million and beyond. I'm John DiLoretto, founder of Knock2. Each week, I sit down with founders, operators, and go-to-market leaders to pull back the curtain on what's fueled their success and the hard-earned lessons they've picked up along the way. New episodes drop weekly. Subscribe to follow along. Welcome back to Knocking to 10, real stories from go-to-market leaders scaling from 0 to 10 million and beyond. I'm your host, John DiLoretto, founder of Knock2. We help you turn your website traffic into your best performing sales channel. Today's guest, Lindsay Rios, has rescued countless Poopy pipelines, proven that rep mental health moves revenue, and insists customer success belongs at the very beginning. Lindsay's path runs from selling BMWs on the lot to building HubSpot's early enterprise engine to leading her own fractional CRO shop. And Lindsay was recently recognized as one of the 100 most powerful women in sales. Lindsay, thrilled to have you here.
What an intro, thank you.
Lindsay, you're a rock star. Thanks for joining us. So Lindsay, you did not start your career in software or in SaaS or anything like that. I think you have a really interesting background. Tell us a little bit about where you began your career.
Yeah, well, I sold cars for nearly 5 years, and my path before that was always, I thought I would be a doctor, and specifically a pediatric neurologist, which is really specific. But when I had graduated from undergrad, which was what we thought was the worst job market ever. Now, here we are now. That's hilarious. But I just wasn't fully ready to go and complete, and get into med school and all of that for, 8-10 years of debt and time and all of that. So my dad, who was working at the dealership that I worked at, because he was a VP of sales, not in tech, but at a company. And of course, that company fell apart in the economy. Had just said, why don't you just work for a little bit, and I was like, that's cool, but what? And then he's like, oh, why don't you come sell some cars? And I loved cars. I was a total car nerd because of my dad. And I'm like, all right, I'll go slang some cars. But then it kind of really stuck. And so, yeah, I did that. And what was really motivating, and something that I recognized in myself, some time ago, was that I really love progression. I love to be able to be, looked at as, oh, we love a skill set you have. Can you use that and do more with it? And so even within selling cars, I even started building a bit of a career, and then made an actual new position for me at some point, where I managed the entire portfolio of leases for the Mini, side in BMW. So,
wow.
So I got a lot of awesome experience just getting a bigger picture, holistically, of not just selling cars, but just this is really good for our entire business. It's really important that retention, and revenue is stayed among here, because especially with cars and car brands like a BMW, there's so many BMW dealerships, I'm in the Bay Area. So, just because you bought your car at a dealership didn't mean that you were loyal to that dealership. It was probably just the one that gave you, quote unquote, the best deal. But how do we get people to actually want to return to the dealership and feel loyal there? Well, unfortunately, car salespeople don't have a great reputation to this day. And most of them didn't do a great job on maintaining relationships with their customers, right? It's retail. You walk in and you deal with what comes in front of you. And then most people could never tell you the name of the person that you bought, that sold them their last car. So because I had built relationships with the people I sold cars to, got friends and family to be referred, repeat customers, so much so that there were reviews on Yelp talking about me. And this gal came in one day and said, I want to talk to Lindsay. I only want to work with her. And I was like, what? How do you even know my name? So, that's really rare still to this day in the car business, right? So, I think something we were gonna talk a little about was, how did that translate later, once I got into tech? And I didn't know at the time that those things that were happening was going to be really useful in tech. And I honestly didn't give, I think, enough credit to my beginning years in sales to what has happened for me, after, until like 6 months ago, I actually only had that aha moment.
So what do you think some of those lessons were that have stuck with you and have translated from, starting in cars to tech and software specifically?
So there's a few things that happened like when I had started selling cars. First of all, like it was still the normal, like people who walk into a dealership that could be a potential sales called an up.
Okay.
So, when a lot of people would just rely on an up walking onto the dealership. And obviously it's known to be pretty cutthroat. You got to be the first one to go talk to that person. And then there was this guy on the BMW side that was notorious for being the first one and then pretty much just blatantly asking, like, well, are you going to buy a car today? And then if the people were like, no, we literally drop them and just disappear. And then there's this thing called being married in car sales where, right. So like if, let's just say that I worked with you, you came in, we went on a test drive, maybe I gave you some numbers on the car. You're not ready today. No problem. We're going to make an appointment for 3 days from now to talk again.
Sure.
I'm going to be off tomorrow. Though,
okay.
And you decide to come in anyways. Either you didn't know or who knows what, doesn't matter.
Yep.
And my friend Jake is available and he now helps give you some new numbers and maybe look at another model.
Yep.
I am now going to have to split my commission with Jake.
Uh-oh.
But you don't buy the car from him that day either. So now you come back.
Interesting. So he's like the sales engineer. He's just getting involved a little bit, but you're still.
As long as he does something to further the deal, which of course a lot of people will just say they did, right?
Okay.
Now we have to split commission. Now what would have been great is that he sold the car fully and all I had to do was the one thing that I had done earlier. Fine. However, you don't buy the car that day. So now you come back and you talk to me and I find out that I'm working for half of my commission now at this point, which by the way is like a couple $100 most of the time.
Yeah.
But now the thing is he and I are married. So we're both working now on say Friday.
Okay.
You've come in, you're going to buy the car from me. So we're going to go through that whole process. He and I are married. So I'm going to say, get your butt out there and go find someone else because now I'll get half of whatever he closes.
Yep.
Now it only happens while the people are physically there at the dealership. This can go on, like it can like, right? So then what would happen is this guy that was notorious for being such a jerk, he'd go, oh, they're not buying a car. He'd go somewhere else. But then sometimes people would just say that because people don't like being asked that. That's super rude.
Sure.
Someone else like me maybe would work with them, be really nice and customer centric. They do buy a car from me. Then he'd go, oh, by the way, I already had helped them. So we're married on that deal.
Uh-oh.
Right. So that was still the environment, right? When I started. And, you really have to learn how to, I didn't want to be anything like that. Right. So I never wanted to operate that way.
Yep.
BDRs became a thing and not how we think of them today in tech. Similar, but the BDR thing was the birth of like the internet selling in car sales. So then they started having these teams that would just be there on the phones with inquiries on the internet or calls, and then they would their whole thing was to get you to come.
Okay.
Appointment setting. So similar, right? Yep. And they would get paid if they got an appointment, and then they would get paid if the person showed up, and then they get paid if someone actually bought a car. So they, those were like what started happening there. And then all the internet leads that sometimes happened were pretty crappy. And so most car salespeople, especially lifers, right? They're like, I don't know what to do with that. I just want to wait for the person to show up on the dealership and deal with what's in front of me.
Sure.
I'm 22. I have no fear of failing because it was just meant to be some work experience. I was just like, so the BDR manager had asked me one day, like, I have these like 10 leads that no one ever did much with, that didn't really respond. Do you want them? Yeah, I want them. So I would email a really nice email to all of them or whatever. And like, usually a couple of them would end up responding. And I would just get these like all these extra car sales every month. Like, where are these coming from?
Yep.
those crappy internet leads you didn't want to do anything with. So, I started learning like different ways of being successful instead of just seeing what was going to happen right in front of me, which isn't easy to do in retail a lot of times.
Sure.
And then, like I said, the relationship building that I did, and I was a total car nerd. So I was obsessed and in love with the product itself. And, that makes your job so much easier and more fun in selling, when you know the product and you know how to be consultative and you know how to be excited about showing them in a demonstration, like in a test drive, right? How to do it and all that. So there's all that. And then there's just that grit that you're going to get in car sales, especially being, I hate to say it, but I was a very young woman in a very not women respectful vibe of a place. So you learn a lot of just tenacity and grit. And so when I got into tech from there, and it was like, okay, well, we didn't have BDRs, we were AEs. I had to do a lot of cold prospecting, cold calling on our own. I was just like, okay,
no big deal,
no problem. Yeah.
Yep. So, you're like, I can sit from the luxury of my desk and pick up the phone and don't need to get into a physical car to do a demo with a customer. Sounds like a breeze.
Yep.
So what advice might you have for those out there in their careers that maybe they're not in tech right now and they're looking to make that transition? What would you kind of look back, and if you were in those shoes again?
It took me a while to even admit to myself like that I could do it. So I think, there's just a lot of mindset about it. One, you get attached to a career that you've started building in something. And I was thinking that I shouldn't leave what I've started.
Sure.
And when you start talking to people who are from maybe the space you want to get into, so tech specifically, you start hearing things that sound so foreign and, it seems scary because you're like, no, I don't know anything about that. And at that time, this is over a decade ago, everyone was still very into like, oh, well, you need 5 years of, relevant tech SaaS experience to become a salesperson. But what I did know was like, I can do that though. Like I've been doing what I've been doing. I could do that. So you just have to remind yourself, like we all are new to things all the time, new jobs, new industries. When you start kindergarten, for God's sakes, like we're constantly doing things that are new and foreign. And then we figure it out and we learn, and it's our job to learn. And so I think you just have to really remind yourself that like, whatever it is that you want to get into, I don't care if you want to be an astronaut and it's aerospace engineering, like you can learn it. That part you got to like throw away that part of it being scary just because it's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And the other thing.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I'm gonna ask, do you remember in your HubSpot interview how what you did to stand out and, how you sort of told that story of your skills and how they were transferable?
Well, to be fair, when I was going to HubSpot, I'd already been coming from being kind of like a director of sales, at a tech company. So, they were more like, are you okay not being in a management position? Because we don't have one right now, but we would really love someone like you to help us, because enterprise was new-ish there, is what I'd say. It was not enterprise selling. It was like a couple hundred people, at a company was considered enterprise.
Sure.
But more specifically, they'd not had anyone be able to help really in this literal Bay Area market in Salesforce and Marketo's backyard, right? And so they were hoping for someone that had experience collaborating from a go-to-market perspective, like I was doing a lot in my last role. So I do feel like I had quite a strong advantage there in that way. And I was happy to do it. It was exciting. But and I was referred also. You got all those things going for you, which was what I was going to say too about like when I got into my first tech job, I was interviewing lots of places, but everywhere was just, wanting me to be an SDR, which I'm not above it. The thing was that we were having a baby and we were now a family of 4. And it was like, I can't afford to do that. Like, it's not that I wouldn't, I can't afford it. So I just kind of really, I say a lot of times what I know is that I've gotten lucky in my career before, and then I got intentional. So I'm very, thankful that I had someone to refer me to the tech company that I ended up working at for 5 years, because without that, they wouldn't have talked to me. And even then, the recruiter at first tried to kind of be like, I don't know, in the beginning, like, maybe you'd be good for our renewals manager role, but we just filled that, and I was like, no, I'm here to be one of your senior AEs. And I remember talking whatever I said, and she just went, I'm gonna be really honest with you. I was really going to try to break up with you, and now I'm going to really need you to come in and interview for this role. So, the referral got my foot in the door, but then I got, then I took advantage of it in a good way.
Yeah. So you are, I would describe it as almost like internet famous, or at the very least LinkedIn famous for your terminology, no poopy pipelines. Absolutely shameless, no fear. What is a poopy pipeline? What does that mean?
Yeah, it means a lot of things. I mean, in terms of like, I've made like internal documents before at organizations I work at that say like, what does a poopy pipeline actually mean to me and to us here? But overall, it just means that you have a pipeline, a revenue pipeline that's filled with crap, not real opportunities, and it's not being managed well or consistently across all of the people that contribute to it.
Is this on a team level, on an individual level?
Yes.
Okay. So like across the board.
Yeah, because any actual salesperson has their own pipeline, technically, right? Yep. But then the org itself, if I'm a sales manager, if I'm a sales leader, if I'm a CEO founder, you have, it just depends on which level you're talking about. It can be poopy at any level. So that's very high level. But it can come from a lot of things, right? It can come from, do you put in opportunities that really aren't qualified? Or even if you do put in really well qualified opportunities, do you not manage them very well through the pipeline itself? Do you even manage it in the CRM, which no, you don't most of the time, in a way that is actually leveraging you yourself as the salesperson to do your job better. It gets seen as the annoying chore that you're supposed to do as a salesperson, or if you're a selling CSM or an SDR, right? Like, I have to update my pipeline because they said so. Yeah. Not because I want to, or that I know that when I'm doing this actually makes me do a better job at my own job. So it can be poopy in a lot of ways. And the problem with when you have that is whether you're a salesperson or you're the actual CRO of the company, you have no idea how to really forecast what's going to end up happening. Which is already hard enough as it is.
Yep.
That's why I talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Would you say, you do quite a bit of fractional CRO work, so you probably have had tons of experience coming into new companies and kind of diagnosing the problem. Are there any, what you describe as perhaps sort of leading indicators or sort of signals that can help you very quickly diagnose that, like, this exists?
Yeah. And in fact, I find that it is much easier to focus on the signals, or I call them symptoms a lot of times, because people don't really necessarily know that their pipeline is poopy, but they feel the pain, they feel the symptoms.
So what are some of the symptoms?
So some of the classic ones are going to be usually where you have some mismatched conversion somewhere in the funnel. What I mean by that is you might be able to build pipeline really well, but then you're not converting it to close one enough. Or it could be the opposite issue. You just can't build enough pipeline, but anything you do build, you could pretty much close. So anywhere in your kind of overall funnel, not consistent. Somewhere it's getting stopped up. So that's usually a pretty easy one to know. But some of the other ones that people don't really think about as much is when you, well, actually, one of the ones I usually just say, if you're more of an actual sales leader or even the CEO or founder, I'm like, how's forecasting going for you? Is it accurate? Is it inconsistent? And no, okay. You have a poopy pipeline. Like, it's pretty simple, and not a simple fix, but it usually comes down to that, because if you don't have a great managed pipeline, you don't have accurate data.
Yep.
It's not useful. And so that you have to have that to have any shot at forecasting as it is. And at the end of the day, forecasting is still an educated guess. Stuff happens while you're in your quarter or month or whatever that still might change it. So that's usually the biggest symptom where it's like, and I actually like to even paint the story. I'm like, hey, do you love your sales leader? Like they're so awesome in all these ways. However, they cannot forecast accurately for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because if that's the case, do not fire them like what always happens. We have a pipeline problem. And if they're wonderful in all these other ways, you're going to majorly disrupt your organization by just cutting their head off like people do, instead of enabling them to actually make lasting change here that you can all benefit from. Because here's the deal, like when people become a sales manager for the first time, there is no course that says, by the way, we're going to start asking you to give us your best case, your most likely, and your commit like every Friday. But I'm not going to tell you how, like you actually get that accurately. Just do it. Head of sales, VPs of sales, like very rarely is there some like, this is actually a great way to forecast for the business. You just get expected to know the business well enough to do so. So that's kind of the story that I kind of try to paint to a CEO of like, is this kind of what's happening? Like, actually, this is probably what we should just do. But there's a couple other ones too. You know, if you don't understand like where your business comes from, right? So if you can't tell me like, well, X% of our pipeline comes from outbound versus inbound, or we're not really sure why we lose our deals. And I couldn't tell you, you know, what our conversion rates are within a given time period. I can just tell you overall, we convert about X%. Like if you don't know those things, your pipeline's poopy. Like,
So if you're an earlier stage business, say you're somewhere between, call it 1 and, I don't know, 5 million in revenue, what do you think are some of these building blocks that you need to put in place to like enable success so that you can go out and forecast accurately? How do you kind of think about, you know, sort of first principles? You get dropped in, you're going to help a team that has a head of sales put this together. What are the blocks you're thinking about putting in place?
Yeah, I love that question, because one of the things I always say, I'm like, it's never too early for RevOps, which I don't think it's thought about enough. It's the thing about RevOps is it makes it sound like it's something you're not supposed to have till you're a little bit later.
Okay.
Right. And I'm like, no, it's almost like it's a mentality. It's a lifestyle. RevOps is a lifestyle. And it's just about setting up stage appropriate.
Okay. So does RevOps need to be higher at that stage, or is it more an owner?
No, just making sure you're setting up infrastructure and a mindset from day one. To set yourself up as you scale, because the longer you wait before you start doing this, the harder it's ever going to be.
Do you think it's something that the head of sales, say you're, I don't know, maybe it's a 10-person commercial team, including CS or whatnot, so you're still early stage, is that a responsibility you think the head of sales can take on, or sometimes do you look for someone else in the business maybe to support it?
I think it just depends on that particular head of sales. I always have, because I love RevOps. It's the way my brain works. But if it's not, I mean, that's one of the other classic issues with these, you know, head of sales and VP of sales hires is there's like, oh, well, you should take that on. You should take that on. And that's why they can't fix poopy pipelines, because they have too many things they're doing. So it doesn't have to be, but
and
you do have to do it.
How do you sort of define early stage RevOps? So, you know, anywhere between, let's call it less than 20 commercial employees. What are some of these key functions or jobs to be done that they need to be thinking about?
So have either a person, or maybe you have to share mentality, because we're bootstrapped. Do we have, first of all, just a technical infrastructure or CRM and any of the kind of important tech stack pieces speaking to each other so that we can easily see our entire customer journey? And so it can be simple. I don't care if you use a spreadsheet. I really wish you don't. But if you do, right, like it doesn't matter. It's just that you need to be able to visibly see that easily. Because from there, all RevOps is now going to be forevermore is like, how do we keep it as efficient as possible? That's why I say it's like a mindset. I coach founders also who are in their sales-led motion. And that is one of the things I constantly talk about, because when you are just you, maybe your co-founder, and you're selling, you have to learn from every single thing you do. How are you going to do that if you have nothing to go back on, start reporting on, have any form of data. So just simple things like have a pipeline.
Okay.
I think that's one of the biggest misses that you could have in early stages is, yes, I know that your Google Sheet is easy to use and follow, but you are getting zero data out of it automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you feel like being a wizard at creating a bunch of formulas and stuff like that, like
And so by that, do you mean, tracking days between deal stages or tracking, if things are stalling, those types of metrics that help sort of inform if this is a problem earlier in the funnel or later in the funnel?
Yeah, as early as you ever can, because you're also not gonna have a ton of quantity, right?
Sure.
So you just have to do as early as you can. And it's not just in the pipeline. I mean, it's going to be if you have leads, if it's inbound or outbound, you want to understand how are those converting? How are those going into my pipeline? So I want to know conversions per stage. I want to know time. I want to know close. I want to know how often there's a competitor involved, which is a property I can create. I want to know if it's something is won and or lost. I want to know why. I want to know the biggest reasons why I'm losing so that I can make informed decisions later. If I'm having a lot of my deals or a lot of my revenue being lost because of my product, then I know where to put my resource. If it's competitor, if it's ghosted, gone dark, which is everybody's, discovery problem. We need to go discover it. So those are the things that you can set up that are not too much for any stage. You just don't need to have every workflow in the world automating it for you or something, right?
Question for you on that. At my last startup, when I joined, it was sort of Series A, and when I left, we were well beyond Series C. But I'm curious. One of the challenges we actually had is we probably had too many close lost reasons. I think at one point we kind of let reps create whatever it may be, and it got a little out of hand. Do you have any sort of best practices for how businesses should think about defining their close loss, of what sort of categories or topics you typically gravitate towards?
Yeah, I mean, I always have my templates now, right, that I've developed that are always a good starting point. And then every business is unique. No, it's not, but yes, it is. So, then you can kind of cater them a little. But I agree, there can be such a thing as too many. I think what's more important though is, well, one, like I wouldn't personally give my reps the ability to add their own. I need it to be a drop down. So the thing about close loss is there's so much power in close loss reporting if you get enough data. You have to do it in a way that doesn't take an AE an hour to close loss their deal too, right? So, so that being said, as much as you can make a property to then report on, and then if you need to, as time goes on, you can create some sub properties. So like, I want to just know, even when a deal's created, actually, I want to know, is there a competitor involved?
Okay.
And make it a required thing to always, know, because it's also great to know in active pipeline how often we're talking about a competitor or not, right? And all that. But then it's already there. So if you close lost it, your property selected is competitor. Then you want to know which competitor. That can be a sub property, right? Things like that. I always think that you want to know like gone dark, / ghosted, / bad timing. That's one right there, in my opinion. And I used to separate bad timing from ghosted or went dark or whatever, but really, it's an easy cop out for a prospect to be like, oh, it's just not good timing. That's not helpful. So I need you to be able to find out what was really the issue here that made it the primary reason for close loss. So that all goes into one. So I think a lot of people can save a lot of properties by just.
Would you put pricing in there as a differentiator from competitors?
Yes, because well, I call it budget.
Okay.
I specifically call that one budget because especially when 2023 and 2022 happened, it was like that one started growing because everyone started really losing a lot of budget. We literally had people like, oh my God, everyone got laid off and my budgets got taken from me. So it was a really great indicator for me to use in my retros of like, how much is the economy affecting us, and is budget changing, and do we need to worry about how we're pricing, yada, yada. So I think budget, gone with a competitor, the whole like ghosted, bad timing, right? Product, if you're a product or service, whichever one you're selling, I want to know how often that's an actual issue. And then if you are in more of a mid-market or enterprise one, I want to track how often it's either a legal issue and or a security issue, because as you go and grow as a company, you have to know, when do we need to
Do you have
change
ISO? Do you have SOC 2?
When does it really matter? Those are usually my main ones. Not a fit. I always have that one.
Okay. Now, and would you hold that more accountable to maybe, I guess this would be when you have full cycle account executives, so not a fit, perhaps a little bit earlier up in the funnel. This is perhaps in the discovery call, not, negotiation, et cetera. So
yeah, the reason why I like having this property is this is a really helpful flag for a sales leader to know if we have an issue with how well we're qualifying deals to get into the funnel. So it should be rarely used.
Yep. And if it is, it's way up in that first discovery call.
Yeah. So if I have an SDR team, then we need to talk about it there. And if it's not, then yeah. But that's why I actually really suggest, because sometimes people have asked me, like, this is like only used like a couple times a quarter. I said, as it should be. If it's going up, we have a problem. So sometimes you need those things as you're kind of leading, lagging indicators.
Sure. So let's go back a little bit earlier stage. You have a stance that, particularly for product-led businesses, so PLG, for example, that you truly believe the third hire should be CS. First off, what is the number 1 and 2 hire, and then help me understand why CS is so important at product-led.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I could honestly take a firm stance on like the order of the hires. It's just depends every time, right?
What are typically, is this an engineer, a product person, or a founder, or salesperson?
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to start, obviously you got your founders, right? Because you got to be the one that's either, I always say it's a fine line between you're dumb enough and you're brave enough to do the damn thing.
Okay.
Not me, I'm not doing it.
Okay, so at number 3, we're saying there's probably a salesperson, is there a marketing person maybe in the org?
It maybe. I used to, back in the day, I had an opinion about which order like marketing or sales should be, and that was just from lack of experience, in my opinion. Now I don't really have a strong one. Again, that it's more dependent.
Okay, but so there's inbound coming in, so the business is succeeding. But why do you lean so much into CS? Talk to us.
Why do I care about that so much? So while I have been a revenue leader in my career, more or less, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit though when I talked about even being in car sales. I've always developed really strong relationships with what I do, and in my career. And I mean, one, it's just more fun for me, period. Yep. But I just saw the benefits of it. Like I said, maybe I was I didn't do it on purpose, but when I saw the benefits of focusing a lot on the customer, then I was like, oh, I'm going to be intentional. So when I was at my first, when I got into that first tech job and I was an AE, not only did I get a lot of referrals. See, that was the thing. I got a lot of referrals instead of having to continue to cold call my eyeballs out, because I will never say I wasn't not very good at it. Just did it because I had to. And so I really worked on being able to build this like network and word of mouth referral business within my own territory. And I worked really closely with whatever CSM was going to get my customers, because we had dedicated CSM. So I'd always leave amazing handoff notes. I would always go over to them and talk to them, because I actually worked in an office back then, all that stuff. And again, and it just, everything was great if I did that. Right? It was great for my customer. My CSMs were, happy about it. It just created wonderful things. It always felt like kind of common sense to me, but when it wasn't across the board and I got into management, I always made sure, one of the things I kind of would tell my AEs, I was like, look, unfortunately, there was a lot of churn issues at that company because of the type of customer we had, and it doesn't really matter. But we could expectation set till we were blue in the face as salespeople, and the same issues would still happen. And so I, especially because of that, made sure that my AEs had great relationships with the CSMs, and we're not the kind of salespeople that would just be like, not my problem. And so if there was a customer who was trying to cancel, I would always tell my salespeople, like, if your CSM asks for your support in that call or in general, you are responsible for doing that.
Yep.
And obviously I was there to support and coach how and be the mediator when needed, all that. But I kind of would say, I'm like, you brought that customer into this world, so you're still responsible for it. It's kind of how I would make them own it. So I saw in that, I was at that company for 5 years, and I just saw how important to the business it was to be customer centric, to be a customer focused salesperson, to create those relationships with other departments, period, things like that. So much so that when I was a head of sales for the very first time, I felt really excited and confident in also owning the customer side of the business. And all that to now fast forward, the thing that people forget about is when you're in those early days, you are so focused on growth and just getting customers, period, and then let alone any that pay you. And I understand that. The problem is that when you get, if you make it into the days of actually like past your first mil and then into the 5 to 10 journey, you will not make it if you have a churn problem, period. Like full stop, and then you talk about all these, LTV and CAC and all those things you'll start looking at. But at the end of the day, you will not be able to sell fast enough, continue to grow your business and maintain a business if you have a churn issue. And it's such a difficult problem to solve in an organization, because if you have a churn issue, it's not going to be one thing to fix. It's going to be this systemic problem. It's going to be a mindset thing. It's going to be a cultural thing. It's going to be all kinds of stuff that you have to fix at all the other parts of the customer journey. So it is your most expensive mistake to not just prioritize the customer part of the journey, period, let alone who who's going to manage it and build it out and all of that.
What are some of your initial KPIs that you would put in place for a first success hire?
Well, I think it's always important, obviously, to have them be responsible for retention. But it's not, that's the thing. I mean, the problem with that is that I don't want them to think that that's their only, like, they're the only ones who are responsible for it. But that's a different discussion. But I also love like time to value as a huge one. There's the honeymoon period that our customers have when they first buy with us. Great, whatever. And forever, everyone's business is different, and when it ends. But when it ends, that's when it gets like so hard for like the customer, the CSM hire, because now it's on them to be like, okay, are they not adopting it? Are they disappearing? Or maybe you have a really buggy, product. I don't know what the problem is, but like honeymoon period's over. And that's like, I feel like that's the period that makes it really difficult, because from now on, it's all like, oh my God, now I just have to retain this customer. And if they're not adopting it, I don't know if they're going to be good. And if they're mad, then we're already scared. And so if you instead worry more about just retention and maybe like renewal, you're emphasizing only all of the, like at the tail end of the potential journey of having that customer at all. Doesn't build enough of a proactive motion and mindset, which is always one of the biggest problems you ever hear in an org. A lot of the ones I help with, oh my God, all we're doing is living in reactive land, right? And it's really hard to try to get proactive when you're already drowning. So looking at more things about what KPIs can we look at and green flags can we look at in terms of time to value, like right when you get them, is something that I think has to be looked at from the beginning. And you don't know what it looks like. That's why it's so hard in early stage. Like, well, I don't know what that looks like. Oh, well, pay attention to it.
So transitioning a little bit. So you've now been operating as a fractional CRO for a number of years. So you've obviously had the chance to work with numerous businesses at various stages between kind of that 0 to 10 million and beyond gap. What is, tell us a little bit about your business and what it means to be a fractional in 2025, and, how you help, whether it's founders, sales leaders, et cetera, kind of accelerate their business.
So, in the beginning part, I was just operating as a kind of an open-ended fractional revenue leader and, talking with businesses that I would say were at either like major inflection points and or like the typical story was we were growing. Everything was great, usually organically. And now we don't know why it stopped.
Okay.
And so that's why I liked coming in as like, I wasn't there to just be like, maybe like your fractional VP of sales or something. I was like, well, then I need to look at the whole go-to-market and figure out why, where is it? And so, typically I'd come in and like for the first 30 days, it was me just, we'd probably have some idea of what I needed to help on, but really I'd go, okay, but let's just have me really assess, get into all the meetings I need to get into, start digging into, and everything. And it's hard because I want to jump in and just like, oh, I can fix that. Oh, I can do, and I have to like reserve that, collect it, and assess and be like, okay, here are all the problems in our, in the business, across, go to market. But here are the couple, 1, 2, 3, depending on that are going to make the biggest impact for us to still meet these company goals. So this is what I think I should be hyper focusing on helping you solve for. Here's how, and here's what I need from you to do it. And then off we go. And that's been really awesome. But the funny thing is that every single time I had to help them with their ICP.
Okay. And how, I'm just curious, what is the largest business or most mature that you still had to help them with this problem?
My latest client right now is over 30 mil in ARR, and I have to.
And is it that they don't know it, or is it that it's evolving or changing now with the maturity of their business?
It's a really good question. Typically what it is that it's not that they're wrong or that they don't know. It's that it's not defined fully enough.
Okay.
And arguably more important.
Okay. So would you say maybe it's in the founders' heads, or it lives somewhere, but it's not defined well enough so that when new hires come on board, that it's very clear for them? Would that?
It's too vague.
Okay.
So it's just like one of my clients was like, oh, well, it's any lab that's licensed, because they sold to laboratories.
Okay.
And I was like, no, I already knew. I hadn't even been there yet. I'm like, that's just not possible. That's not your ICP. Just because they can buy your product doesn't mean.
Okay. So take us a few steps deeper. How do you go from lab that's life sciences to something that's a real ICP? What does that funnel look like, or filtering, I guess?
So, of the amount of labs that were out there, there's obviously varying sizes, right? In terms of employee count, revenue. Some of them had multiple locations. Some of them were just a single owned one, right? Those are very different. Then it's literal location. Does that matter? Geographic location. We really had to stick to the United States, even though there were some other countries that wanted to talk to us because of just the different legalities and stuff that we couldn't, solve. There was also different types of lab owners. So sometimes they were just people who were a scientist before and then decided to have their own lab. They don't know how, they do a kind of horrible job usually on like how to run a business. So like they didn't tend to do so great compared to the ones that were just business owners and, anyways, that doesn't matter. But like point is like,
so buyer persona profiling.
It's including your buyer personas and the experience that they had. And then the problem obviously that we're solving for, that one was the easiest one. That's not necessarily the case for a lot of people. And then also depending on what tech stack the labs already had really mattered for us and the stage we were at. So you have to break all that down. And the problem is that, so what I was gonna say is like, it's that too, but it's arguably more important of an issue that each then go to market department, so marketing and sales and success and product and whatever, they're all operating from a very different or a very slightly different definition. So that's where when people are like, I don't know what happened. We were great, we were growing, and now I'm like, I can tell you what happened. You're all operating and strategizing and building towards a different definition of your ideal customer.
So it sounds like from you, once the TAM is figured out, within that, you're looking at firmographics, then you're looking at technographics, then you're looking at buyer personas. And once you've made it through all those hoops, then you start to look at the problem and how that aligns. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. And the thing about really defining an ideal customer profile, you said something earlier too, it's that it's not just one time, right? You have to iterate, your ICP evolves. And so then not only do you need to be able to be honest with yourself, and that's the thing that's funny about this, is that it sounds like I could just go look at some data and whatever. There's a lot of feelings involved.
Yes.
with an ideal customer profile.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, if it's depending on the size of the company, I will interview every person individually so that I can get their own feedback so that they can't influence each other.
And how often does each person say something just a little bit different?
Here's the thing. Most of the time, everyone says pretty much something similar. That's the thing. It's not wild. It's there's the small nuances then, and it's always coming from either like the CEO and founders where they're way too visionary.
Okay.
And then there's also then the people who are a little bit jaded. Right. And all of that. But yeah, it's being able to come back and say, I'm a third party. I'm not emotionally attached to this. I am being able to come here and kind of be a mirror for you. And I am telling you that not just anecdotally from everyone, but now also your data. This picture that I'm painting for you is the healthiest thing for your business right now. What you can actually sell to, blah, 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 blah. And then let's talk about some conflicts here because they always happen. I'm seeing a little bit of not a clear understanding on this one. This sounds like this is what you want to work towards, but not what you can do now. And when I can help them see that, usually they can go, that is correct. I'm like, so if you want to make it to this goal you have or make it as a business, sometimes it's that dire. You have to stick here and you have to be narrow. And it's so scary, right? To say no to all this and only say yes to this. So that's what you have to do. So
build your niche.
So going back to kind of your initial question, when that's been happening every time, and I've done this before even when I was full-time, but not as formal, I realized I'm going to productize this. This just has to be a thing that I can come in and help orgs do, because you might not, once I help you figure out how to then get your strategy to now incorporate this across the board, I wish you well. You can do this. Go on, go forth, right? So this year I pivoted and I said, all right, you know what? Not that I'm not still a fractional CRO for companies that really need it, but I'm having way more fun, hyper focusing on helping them with their ICP and or fixing their Poopy pipelines.
Love it. Very cool. Well, Lindsay, I think unfortunately we're running out of time. I had a few more topics, but I don't think we're gonna be able to get to it today, but this was awesome. Thank you for taking me through your entire journey from your early days to your transition to sales leadership, all the way through to the work you're doing now as a CRO and a top 100 sales leader. Very impressive. Where's the best place for people to follow along and connect with you online?
LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. That's it for Knocking to 10. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, drop a review, and check out knock2.ai if you're interested in turning your anonymous website traffic into pipeline. Lindsay, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you.